Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be looking at cystic fibrosis and Kartagener syndrome.
Right.
And these are two conditions that you were particularly curious about.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were preparing for a conference on genetic disorders, and I think given your focus on the respiratory system,
Right.
you'll find these two conditions particularly interesting.
Absolutely.
So get ready for some serious aha moments, because today we're going to be unraveling how these syndromes, while seemingly different,
Yeah.
actually share a surprising connection. And that connection is mucus.
That's right. And although they manifest differently,
Yep.
both cystic fibrosis and Kartagener syndrome ultimately lead to this buildup of mucus, particularly impacting the respiratory system.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
First up, cystic fibrosis, or CF as it's commonly known.
So CF is a classic example of what we call an autosomal recessive disorder.
Okay.
This means that to inherit CF, a person needs to receive 2 copies of the faulty gene,
Right.
one from each parent.
So it's like a double whammy of a specific gene.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the culprit in CF is the CFTR gene, which resides on chromosome 7.
Okay.
Now, this gene is responsible for producing a protein that acts like a gatekeeper,
Right.
regulating the movement of salt and water in and out of our cells.
Okay, so we've got this gatekeeper protein.
Yes.
What happens when it's faulty? Things get a little sticky.
You could say that. You see that this protein malfunction disrupts the delicate balance of salt and water inside and outside of the cells.
Right.
Think of it like this. In a normal cell, the CFTR protein ensures the right amount of chloride, a type of salt,
Right.
and water can move freely across the cell membrane, but in CFF with that faulty CFTR protein,
Okay.
chloride and water get stuck inside the cell, and when that happens, sodium, another type of salt,
Right.
starts building up outside the cell.
And then that's where the mucus mayhem begins. And I vaguely remember from high school biology something about osmosis, right?
Precisely. That excess sodium outside the cells acts like a sponge, drawing water out from surrounding tissues and fluids,
Right.
including the mucus that lines our lungs, pancreas, and other organs, and this is what makes the mucus thick and sticky.
So instead of that nice, thin, slippery mucus we need,
Right.
it becomes, well, more like glue.
A very fitting analogy. And as you can imagine, the thick, sticky mucus is anything but ideal,
Right.
especially in the lungs. It's like trying to breathe through a straw clogged with glue.
Ugh, that sounds awful. And it's not just the lungs affected, is it?
Unfortunately, no, this mucus buildup can impact multiple organs.
Right.
In newborns, it can even cause a serious bowel obstruction called meconium ileus.
Wow.
This is where their first bowel movement is so thick and sticky it can't pass,
Oh, wow.
often signaling a potential CF diagnosis.
Wow. So even from the very beginning,
Yeah.
CF can have a significant impact.
Absolutely.
And as if that weren't enough, this mucus buildup has a field day in other organs, too.
Unfortunately, yes. Take the pancreas, for example. This organ is responsible for producing digestive enzymes,
Oh.
those crucial proteins that break down our food. However, the thick mucus in CF can clog the ducts in the pancreas,
Right.
preventing these enzymes from reaching the intestines where they're needed.
And that's how CF leads to problems with digestion and
Digestion.
nutrient absorption.
This is known as pancreatic insufficiency,
Okay.
and it can lead to a whole host of digestive problems, from chronic diarrhea and stomach pain to malnutrition and deficiencies in essential vitamins.
It's like a domino effect, with
Uh-huh.
one problem triggering another.
Precisely. And if left untreated, this pancreatic insufficiency can even lead to CF-related diabetes.
Wow.
You see, the pancreas is also responsible for producing insulin, which regulates blood sugar. But in CF, the pancreas is already overworked,
Right.
trying to overcome those blocked ducts, and over time, it can struggle to produce enough insulin, leading to diabetes.
It's amazing how one tiny gene malfunction can have such a cascading effect throughout the body.
It really is.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of everything.
Absolutely.
It's incredible how much we can learn from just one faulty gene. But how do you even begin to diagnose CF? It sounds like catching it early, especially with those potential newborn complications, is crucial.
You're absolutely right. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to managing CF, and thankfully, we've got some pretty effective tools at our disposal.
Okay.
The gold standard for diagnosing CF is something called a sweat test.
A sweat test.
Oh.
Okay, color me intrigued. How does sweating help determine if someone has CF?
Well, remember how we talked about that chloride transport issue?
Right.
It turns out that people with CF have higher levels of chloride in their sweat.
Okay.
The sweat test stimulates sweat production and then measures the amount of chloride present.
Right.
It's a simple yet effective way to make a diagnosis.
So simple yet so clever.
Yeah.
What about newborns, especially given that meconium ileus can be an early sign? Are there specific tests for them?
You're spot on. Early detection is vital, particularly for newborns. Many countries have now incorporated CF screening into their routine newborn screening panels, using a test called the immunoreactive trypsinogen test, or IRT.
Okay.
It involves taking a tiny blood sample, usually from the baby's heel, to
Mm.
measure for elevated levels of a specific enzyme called trypsinogen, which tends to be higher in babies with CF.
Okay.
If the IRT result comes back positive, they'll conduct a sweat test to confirm the diagnosis.
It's reassuring to know these screening tools are in place.
Yeah.
So once a CF diagnosis is confirmed, what are the treatment options? Is there a cure?
Unfortunately, there isn't a cure for CF yet.
Oh,
However, significant advances in treatment have been made that can help manage the symptoms, prevent complications, and dramatically improve quality of life.
right.
The approach is multifaceted and focuses on a few key areas: keeping the airways clear, fighting off infections, and supporting the digestive system.
Let's break that down a bit. What does managing CF actually look like day to day?
For starters, there are techniques to help clear that thick mucus from the airways. One such technique is chest physiotherapy.
Yeah.
Here, a therapist uses percussion and vibration techniques on the chest to help loosen and drain the mucus.
Okay.
Imagine gently clapping on someone's back to help dislodge phlegm.
Right.
There are also devices that vibrate the chest wall, serving the same purpose of clearing the airways.
Okay.
Another method utilizes hypertonic saline,
Right.
which is essentially a saltwater solution that is more concentrated than the fluids in our body.
So it's almost like using the concept of osmosis in reverse. You're drawing the water back out of the cells and into the mucus, making it thinner and easier to cough up.
That's a great way to think about it.
Okay.
Hypertonic saline helps rehydrate the mucus and makes it much easier to clear from the airways.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, what about those infections that people with CF are so susceptible to? They sound pretty frightening.
They can be, but thankfully we have effective antibiotics at our disposal.
Right.
Azithromycin, for example, is often prescribed as a preventative measure to keep certain bacteria like Pseudomonas aeruginosa at bay. This type of long-term antibiotic use helps reduce the frequency and severity of lung infections, which is a major concern for those with CF.
That's reassuring to hear. And what about the pancreatic insufficiency we talked about earlier?
Right.
How is that managed?
Pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy is a game changer for individuals with CF-related pancreatic insufficiency.
Okay.
They take these enzymes with meals to help their bodies break down food and absorb nutrients effectively.
Okay.
Imagine these enzymes as little helpers that do the job of the pancreas's own digestive enzymes, allowing those with CF to enjoy their food and receive vital nutrition.
It's incredible how these treatments target different aspects of CF.
Right.
It definitely sounds like managing CF involves a whole team of specialists. Are there any new treatments on the horizon that you're particularly excited about?
Absolutely. There have been incredible advancements in CF treatment recently,
Right.
particularly with a new class of drugs called CFTR modulators.
Okay.
These medications work by directly targeting that faulty CFTR protein we talked about, helping it to function more effectively.
So instead of just managing the symptoms, these drugs are going straight to the source of the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Two examples are ivacaftor and lumacaftor.
Okay.
Some CFTR modulators work by increasing the number of CFTR proteins that reach the cell surface where they're needed.
Right.
Others act by improving the function of the existing proteins, helping them to better transport chloride and water.
Okay.
For some people with CF, these drugs have been life-changing,
Yep.
significantly improving lung function and quality of life.
That's fantastic. It sounds like there's a lot of hope for the future of CF treatment.
Absolutely. The development of CFTR modulators is a major breakthrough in CF research and gives us a lot of optimism for the future.
It's amazing to see how medical advancements are making a real difference for people with CF.
It really is.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground on CF. Ready to switch gears to Kartagener syndrome.
Let's dive in.
Perfect. Now, Kartageners is a different beast altogether.
Yep.
Even though it also involves breathing difficulties and those recurring infections we talked about.
Right, you're right. While both CF and Kartageners can cause respiratory problems, their underlying causes are completely different.
Okay.
Remember how CF is all about that malfunctioning CFTR protein and its impact on salt and water transport?
It's practically engraved in my brain at this point.
That's great because understanding that difference is key here.
Right.
Kartagener's syndrome, on the other hand, is all about cilia.
Cilia, those tiny hair-like structures that line our airways. I remember learning about them in biology, but I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Right.
Could you refresh my memory?
Think of cilia as tiny brushes that constantly sweep mucus and debris out of our airways,
Okay.
much like those little brushes that clean the crumbs off of your keyboard. They're essential for maintaining clear and healthy airways.
Right.
Now, in Kartagener syndrome, the cilia themselves are defective.
So instead of functioning like those little cleaning brushes, what happens to the cilia in Kartageners?
In Kartageners, the cilia have a hard time moving. Right. They lack the power to effectively sweep away mucus.
Okay.
To understand why, we need to zoom in even closer.
Okay.
Cilia have these tiny arms called dynon arms that act like little motors,
Right.
powering their back and forth movement.
Yeah.
In Kartageners, these dynon arms are faulty, so the cilia can't move as effectively.
So instead of efficiently sweeping away mucus, the cilia just sort of sit there.
Pretty much. And as you can imagine, just like in CF, this leads to mucus buildup,
Right.
making the airways more susceptible to infections.
So both CF and Kartageners can cause mucus buildup and breathing problems, but for completely different reasons.
Exactly.
Fascinating. But here's a curveball. I read that Kartageners can also cause something called cetus inversus. What does that even mean?
You're right. Kartageners can indeed cause cetus inversus.
Okay.
It's actually one of the syndrome's most striking features.
Okay.
Cetus inversus means that the internal organs are reversed.
What?
Like a mirror image.
Wait, so someone with Kartageners could have their heart on the right side of their chest instead of the left?
Exactly. It's a rare occurrence, but a striking example of the diverse ways genetic mutations can manifest in the body.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've got these immotile cilia mucus buildup, respiratory infections, and now flipped organs.
Right.
Anything else we should know about Kartageners?
Well, we can't forget about infertility.
Right.
Kartageners can affect fertility in both men and women.
Right.
In men, the immotile cilia we've been discussing can actually impact sperm motility, making it difficult to conceive.
So even though sperm might be produced without those properly functioning cilia, they struggle to reach their destination.
Exactly. And while the mechanisms in women are a bit more complex,
Right.
Kartageners can increase the risk of ectopic pregnancies.
It's amazing how something that seems so small, like these tiny cilia, can have such a widespread impact.
It really is.
Kartageners is clearly more than just a respiratory condition. It's a multi-system disorder with significant implications. Wow. Ooh, we've covered so much ground today, from tiny cilia to entire organs flipping sides. It's remarkable how these seemingly minor malfunctions at the cellular level can have such a huge impact on our health. But I have to admit, it's a lot to keep straight. Any chance we could do a side-by-side comparison of CF and Kartageners just to really nail down those key differences?
Absolutely. A comparison would be really helpful. Let's see, both conditions can cause those recurrent respiratory infections, but for totally different reasons.
Right.
With CF, it's all about that thick, sticky mucus caused by the faulty CFTR protein and the issues it creates with chloride and water transport.
Right.
On the other hand, in Kartageners, the culprit is the cilia themselves. They simply can't sweep away the mucus effectively due to those defective dynon arms.
Right. And then there's that whole situs inversus phenomenon, which is a hallmark of Kartageners, but wouldn't be seen in someone with CF.
Exactly. And while both conditions can affect fertility, they do so through different mechanisms. Another key difference is the impact on the pancreas. CF often involves pancreatic insufficiency, leading to those digestive problems, and a higher risk of developing diabetes. This isn't typically a feature of Kartageners.
That comparison really helps to solidify everything we've talked about. It's incredible how two conditions can share a symptom like respiratory problems, yet have completely different root causes.
It speaks to the complexity of the human body, and it highlights the importance of thorough diagnosis to ensure the right treatment path.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of genetics and respiratory disorders. We've gone from understanding the genetic basis of these conditions to exploring their symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment options. It's amazing how much progress has been made, especially in the field of CF treatment.
It really is promising, and for both conditions, early diagnosis and proactive management can make a world of difference in terms of quality of life.
So true. A huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive into CF and Kartagener syndrome. It's been fascinating picking your brain.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you a newfound understanding of CF and Kartageners, and maybe even sparked some curiosity about the intricate workings of the human body. Until next time, keep those questions coming and stay curious.